My name is Glenn Kovar, and I've been an English as a second language instructor since 1993. I have had great opportunities to travel around the world and teach abroad as well. In fact, I've been traveling for over 40 years. My mother was born in Vienna, Austria, and my father was born in Boskovice, Czechoslovakia. So language has always been a part of my life. In fact, as I was growing up, I spoke to my mother in German and to my father in Czech. Because both of my parents wanted me to retain their languages and cultures, when I was 3 years old, we moved from Canada, the country of my birth, to Europe. For the next 10 years, I was educated in Austria primarily, but also in Czechoslovakia. Since all of our relatives lived only in those two countries, I was not only fluent in those languages, but also established strong relationships with my family overseas. Naturally, during those 10 years, from age 3 to 13, my parents made sure I spoke English as well, because their goal was to always return to Canada. When we did return, I was a fluent German, Czech, and English speaker, and on my way to learning and acquiring French, one of the official languages in Canada. Language has always been a large part of my life. When I say language, I'm also referring to the cultures that surround the languages. That is where the heart of my personal philosophy is rooted. Because of my upbringing, being surrounded by different people who speak other languages, living in different cultures, allowed me to celebrate the unknown or unfamiliar cultures and languages, not to fear them. In this regard, I appreciate Lev Vygotsky's viewpoint in that he believed that learning is social in nature, and all learning is a result of interactions with more knowledgeable, competent individuals. From my early years of learning German, Czech, and English, to my later years of learning French and Japanese, Vygotsky's idea of social learning has always resonated with me. Every time I step into a classroom, I recognize that I'm not there to simply feed students linguistic knowledge. I'm there to try to bring awareness to them and to allow them to come to the realization that they can be a global citizen, not only someone who is just learning English. I want students to continue to be who they are and stay connected to their traditions and beliefs. Yet, I want them to be able to expand their views, to see the world in other ways, so that they can gain cultural acceptance and strive for language acquisition. My personal philosophy regarding teaching English language learners is to build a bridge between language and culture, build the confidence of students, and to give them something that will allow them to reach their personal and linguistic goals. The main purpose of teaching English to speakers of other languages is to create a solid base of language and cultural awareness. As instructors, we play a vital role in the success of our students. Whether those students are learning English to get accepted into a university, or whether they are studying to get a job, or if they are newly landed immigrants who need linguistic and cultural knowledge to navigate through their everyday lives, does not change the fact that we are the base of their studies. We are the ones who are building the first solid base of linguistic and cultural knowledge that students can build upon. Without a solid base, there can be no solid structure. In my view, the role of teaching English to speakers of other languages is that which is similar to a parent. Instructors have to be conscious of what they are doing in the class at all times. There's an educational tightrope an instructor must walk, in my opinion. Instructors, as I mentioned previously, have to play a similar role as a caregiver to not only supply students with communicative and academic knowledge, but to make certain the students are comfortable, which puts them in a position to excel to the best of their abilities. I mentioned previously that I see the role of the instructor as a parent. It's because we have to take an active role, like good parents do, in all aspects of our students' lives. It is paramount for us to be able to know who our students are, where they come from, and in which parameters they need their language. In addition to that, we have to be their linguistic guides and mentors as well, knowing when to push them harder or pull back more, when to be serious and when to have fun. It is like walking a tightrope, but when the walk comes to an end, the benefits are worth the effort. So then, as instructors, how do we accomplish this? First, of course, we have to instruct the language itself. As I mentioned previously, understanding where our students come from is important because we can determine what linguistic or cultural differences those students may have. As instructors, we should be able to determine how to aid in the students' linguistic development. When I create lessons, I try to develop the strengths the students already have. When I teach my classes, I will use various techniques to accomplish that. I enjoy using polls to allow students to understand what they know or do not know linguistically, and for me to see the results as well. I use concept maps to initiate conversation and use word clouds to emphasize what we did in previous concept maps. In addition, to accommodate different styles of learning, I use spreadsheets. The key point, though, is that I create a variety of activities that can either be communicative or academic work. I believe it's also vital to have students moving and being active. Stephen Krashen, with his input hypothesis, believed that when learners focus on communication, when the classroom is void of theories or grammar and memorization of the language, students learn best. I've found this to be valid in my classroom as well. In addition to creating a variety of communicative and academic activities, I ensure that my classroom invites students to be motivated and inspired. Not only do I have international themed posters on the walls, as well as world maps, there are a variety of books available for students to read, brochures from around the city to look over, language games on shelves to take down to play, as well as having a music library of compact discs available for students to borrow. Having Realia engages students and having tactile objects around them makes the language learning experience more a reality, not a cold clinical experience. I try to incorporate as much as the real world into my classroom as possible. Research has shown that students do benefit from learning social language skills in order to interact with others, as well as academic proficiency that includes writing, reading, listening, and speaking, where students should learn to infer, evaluate, compare, and classify information they receive. Jim Cummings, who coined the terms basic interpersonal communication skills and cognitive academic language proficiency, recognized the differences in these two areas. I agree that not only should students learn their vocabulary, phrases, pronunciation, and grammar, they should be able to use them. I emphasize role playing in the class because it allows students to meet other language learners from other countries where they have to try to adapt to different kinds of accents and pronunciation and react to different types of social behavior. It is usually at this juncture when I can add some cultural development and linguistic aspects. As a class, we will review what behaviors are more or less beneficial in Canada to use, as well as language that might be more appropriate, and then attempt role plays again. Using the language we learn in communication activities is necessary, but students should also be able to present information in a more formalized way. So I incorporate presentations as well in my curriculum. It is here where students can recognize that not only should their speaking change from informal to more formal, but how they should express themselves and what level of vocabulary they should use as well. It is in this way that I incorporate Jim Cummings' ideas of basic interpersonal communication skills and cognitive academic language proficiency. As another example, an activity I use in class is learning selected idiomatic expressions slightly beyond students' capabilities. I include the cognitive academic language proficiency task of handing out idiomatic expressions and having students work in groups to do fill in the blanks activities or to create definitions. Students confirm with learners from other groups and then we review as a class. I then create scenarios where the students have to conduct interviews or have discussions and even engage in role plays. As a follow-up activity, the students could present their findings to the class using the idiomatic discussions they previously learned. By doing this, I've had the students use social communication skills as well as academic language skills. I create these activities slightly beyond the students' capabilities because, as Stephen Krashen said, a learner could acquire language when exposed to comprehensible input that belongs to the level I plus 1. A learner progresses when they receive second language input that is one step beyond of what their current stage of linguistic competence is. While the comprehensible input is the target language learners may not be able to produce yet, they have the ability to understand it. So, the role of the instructor, once again, is that of caregiver, a mentor, a motivator, and perhaps even a friend. The instructor must also analyze a student's language, knowing when to aid in correction, checking errors through recasting, asking for clarification, referring to a grammar point previously taught, or pointing out errors directly are the various ways instructors can aid in language correction. Not impeding a student from using their language by correcting errors at inappropriate moments is a skill that instructors should hone. I mentioned that instructors must be a motivator. I have had some students from their mid-20s to their late 50s or older who become disheartened with their language learning experience because they feel their age prohibits them from acquiring English. While Eric Lenenberg and his critical period hypothesis contended in his writings from 1967 that the ability to learn a second language is limited or has a critical period. Ellen Bialystok and Kenji Hakuta showed that it is in fact false. They contended that while it may be more challenging to learn a second language, it is not impossible. In fact, there is simply a gradual decrease in proficiency levels that reflect the natural path of human development in general. To keep my students from feeling those insecurities, I tell them that if I could learn Japanese at age 26, they can also learn English. It is never too late. While there are many roles the instructor plays, what about the students? Students, if they would like linguistic success, should try to create a type of persona. I always inform my students that when I teach abroad, I try to mimic the native speakers linguistically and culturally. When students understand that they are creating a persona, it separates whom they are inside to the performance they are giving as English speakers on the outside. In some cultures, or with some older students, they feel a kind of anxiety, sometimes anger toward English because it's something they must learn, and they often fear that they will lose their identity. When I inform them that they can create a persona and are simply role playing, it puts most students at ease. The role of the student should be that of an active participant, being a cultural and linguistic sponge to then use their knowledge in areas of their lives they need it most. I also inform my students that learning English and then acquiring it is not limited and should not be limited to the classroom alone. I encourage students to be involved in activities outside of the classroom, such as doing volunteer work or creating cultural event days, showcasing their countries within the community, or joining a sports club or academic club in order to meet native speakers outside of the classroom setting. By interacting with me in class and by involving themselves in the community and with their peers in class, students are on their way to second language acquisition. As Michael Long, a professor at the University of Maryland, contends, the key to acquisition is interaction or involvement. I mentioned previously the importance of the instructor creating a bridge between language and culture, and this bridge extends to the community as well. As instructors, we come across a multitude of cultures perhaps daily. I have taught a variety of students, and I'm not only familiar with their languages but also cultures. Oftentimes, we may forget that the general public does not have that opportunity and may carry with them some biases or stereotypes. It should be our aim, in my view, to create understanding between our students who are from foreign cultures and people in the community. I've had my students create cultural event nights at community centers where these groups can come together and explore their cultures. It does not have to be such a formal event, though. Instructors can invite students to their homes for a potluck party that includes friends from the community as well. Whatever technique is used, it is of the utmost importance for instructors to bridge the gaps that might exist. We can be the linguistic and cultural glue that binds groups together to create awareness, understanding, and empathy. I have enjoyed the linguistic ride I have been on both as a student and as an instructor. I try to bring my love of learning language to the classroom and encourage students to think of their language learning experience as a whole, not just a part of their lives. With great effort, being active, and having fun meeting people and discovering aspects of language and culture, success will come. Creating those linguistic and cultural bridges to stroll across will bring all of us together. We will become global citizens and we will have global harmony.